When a woman comes in and you begin to go through her history with her, you can tell fairly quickly what's going to be needed. A woman who comes in with her children into that very crowded little office, and the children immediately disappear off into the garden. You know one thing's very sure, that she hasn't got a very close relationship with them, if any at all. Because in that great big packed house full of strange faces, if they don't feel the need to cling to her, then they've obviously cut off from her a very long time ago. If you see that she's come from a violent home herself, as well as marrying a violent man, you've got double damage to deal with. If you see very often that in her own violent family situation, she was taken into care very early, then the chances are that she's learned nothing about mothering, and you're going to have to start at the very beginning, maybe teaching her to bath herself, let alone bath her children. Some women are so broken down by the time they get to us that it's very hard for them to even organize a meal for their children, let alone getting up on time to get the children to school. And that's going to be a very long process on the way back. I think the very early learning experiences with the first few mothers who came in, who got out of one violent relationship and seemed to be settling, and then would go out and recreate a violent situation with a new man and would come back bruised, began to make me realize that for some percentage of women, certainly not all of our women, I would say a third, where they were coming from violent homes themselves, they were attracted towards violence. Their pleasure and their pain seemed to be getting very confused. And at the time when she was being beaten, in fact, she was satisfying a need in herself, although it hurt very badly afterwards. And she would look and seek for more violence. And that was a very big learning experience, because I had completely rejected the provocation theory, partly because I was so frightened of the prejudice that existed within the society that actually tainted all women with the need to be beaten. Those battered children grow up to batter, that's what I learnt, whether it be a man or a woman. And I now know that if a woman comes in with a history of violence in her own childhood, the chances are she will be probably violent to her children, and she will want to live on this knife edge of crisis and danger, and she has to learn about herself and why she needs those forms of danger. In the very beginning, I think I was very frightened of the violence of the men, and slowly, and this is why we didn't have men coming in, but slowly I realized, as the men did turn up and weren't violent towards us, that in fact they had their needs as well and could be controlled and helped not to act violently in our house. And also I saw the need for the children to have good, gentle men around. So the first salaries that were paid were to men to work within the community.
Stop showing up all the time. We'll get you one crate. Well, then you lose them. We had crayons out early, didn't we? Well, now shush, man. We're going to have some milk soon. You want to go over there?
Well, the play school is in a big old church, and of the 6 playgroup leaders, 5 are men.
Won't come down there, will she?
Oh, no, don't worry about it. It's all right. It happens every day. Don't worry.
This is very important for the children, who for the first time in their lives experience a man who's totally different to the father. He's kind and gentle, he can feed a child, clean child up, cook, look after children, and it's a great shock for the boys, because their initial reaction to a gentle man is to try and provoke him, and provoke and provoke and provoke, because if they can get an explosion out of that man, it'll merely reinforce what they know already, and that is that men are violent. In fact, none of the playgroup staff are ever allowed to hit or smack a child. There is no violence at all from the staff towards the children. The way back for the children is loving, and this is one of the responses. The men are very able to cuddle, and it's amazing to see quite grown-up boys regress back into being stroked and cuddled by men and by the female staff. And if they're building up into an explosion, the staff will hold them until the explosion's over. However difficult it is, your shins can get kicked in, but you just hang on until the child regains control. And then the child discovers that he can afford to explode, and the whole world doesn't go up with him. But there are people who are there who are strong enough and loving enough to cope with him, however violent he is. And then from that moment on, you find the beginning of the child being able to hang on to himself.
Come on. Pull your sleeves up a bit. When you roll on that piece. You want to roll that piece out? Just get the hair out there. You roll that piece. It's nice, isn't it? It's nice. It looks nice. Oh yes, it's a good idea. Can I have one as well? You want one for me as well?
How many sugar?
No sugars, no. You want to go together? Do you think it needs more milk?
No.
I don't think yours needs... I think yours is all right, love. I don't think it needs more milk. You sure this doesn't need more milk?
Get your butt.
You want to make one of them, all right? Good down. Good boy. Right, now, here's a toilet bag for you. Find this sock and put it over the top, all right? Right, let's have a look at it. Oh, no. Can you lift your hand? Yeah. Go on your vest now. Let's change the vest. Find you a new vest. You better find you new everything. Yeah. Yeah. You want? Just go and find your vest. Right, put this one in? Yes. And, pants. Well, I think we can rig up some pants. Here's socks to on. Those look nice, don't they? Yeah. Right, stick some hair on in there. Alright.
Most of our children are very backward. There's nothing wrong with their intelligence, it's just that school was a totally irrelevant experience. So when they come to us, on the whole, we tend not to send them to school at the crisis refuge, because it's very important not just to bung them into a local school, where they then fail again, coming from the chaos of the centre, but to keep them within our play school situation, where they begin to make relationships with adults who are very sympathetic and who really understand them. I have quite a lot of teachers on my staff and psychologists.
Pretty, isn't it?